Earthquakes don't discriminate. They strike grassy fields and major cities with the same brutal force. Today, around 600 million people live in areas where damaging earthquakes occur. Since scientists can't stop quakes or even predict them, they're working on ways to make sure people survive them. The best way to do that is to keep structures intact. One major city prone to earthquakes is San Francisco. In October 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake stopped the Bay Area in its tracks. It measured 7.1 on the Richter scale. The damage was extensive. Like all quakes, damage was caused by the shaking of the ground as waves of energy traveled through it. Tremors sent vibrations through buildings and bridges, sometimes crumbling them to pieces. But the Loma Prieta quake did more than shake the ground. It was a wake-up call for engineers to retrofit all of the buildings and bridges in the area. Seismic retrofitting is a fancy way of saying making structures stronger for the next big one, making them stronger while still allowing them to move. As engineer Chuck Syme explains, some movement is vital for a structure's survival.
If you've ever driven across a long-span bridge, like the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, and traffic causes you to stop, and you sit in your car and you can actually feel yourself being bumped up and down in the car itself. And that's what we're feeling is the elasticity of the bridge. I call it the heartbeat of the bridge, because if the bridge is not beating elastically, it's failing. And a good rule of thumb is if it stops beating, get off the bridge. It's no longer alive.
As bridges and buildings move, they absorb the energy of a quake. These days, engineers rely on computers to figure out how much movement is too much. High-tech systems show them where failures might occur and help them design against disaster. In the Bay Area, famous landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge are now being retrofitted or strengthened. On these bridges, rivets are being replaced by high-strength bolts. Steel plates are added to the towers. And the bases of most bridges are getting additional support. We now know that many lives are lost during earthquakes, not because of the quakes themselves, but because structures could not withstand them. Engineers hope their earthquake-proofing efforts will ultimately save lives. The same forces that lead to earthquakes also make mountains. Around 50 million years ago, the Asian and Indian tectonic plates collided with incredible force. Neither would give way, so the land began to move up. What started at sea level is now the Himalayas, standing more than 5 miles high. This is the highest mountain range in the world, and it's still growing. And as it does, enormous stresses are building that must eventually be released. Nearly 100 million people live around the Himalayas in a danger zone. In the last century alone, earthquakes here claimed the lives of more than 30,000 people. The area has been quiet for years, but scientists think another big quake is overdue. Rebecca Bendick from the University of Colorado is one scientist keeping track of the situation. Global positioning satellites send her information that could provide an early warning. She's learning how the plates converge or push together to create stresses within the land.
The crux of the matter is that we need to know how that total convergence is partitioned over the fault. If all 60 millimeters of convergence has to be accommodated in one place, on one fault, on this one narrow line, then the earthquakes we have there are going to be big and they're going to happen often. But if instead all of that strain is accommodated on several different faults, something like an accordion, then each fault can only be expected to fail less frequently and less violently.
She and her colleagues also monitor an area in the foothills that is rising at an even faster rate. Signs of this uplift are found in the rivers that spill through the valleys. In some places, the land rises faster than the river can erode it, creating giant steps and treacherous whitewater rapids. Bendick takes a ride through these rapids to see how the area is changing.
Those steeper places are corresponding to places where the uplift is quick, so quick that the river can't keep up. This will give us clues about places to come back and do more intensive GPS research to try to pin down the uplift rate.
Conducting research like this is both exhilarating and dangerous. But in an earthquake zone inhabited by people, the information is vital.